I stood frozen at my daughter's wedding reception, watching my mother tap her champagne glass with a silver spoon. The familiar sound made my stomach twist. I knew that smirk on her face all too well. She was about to do what she did best, tear me down in front of everyone. My name is Lillian, and I should have been solely focused on how radiant my daughter Zaylee looked in her wedding dress. Instead, I was counting my breaths, trying to stay calm as my mother Valerie rose from her seat at the head table. "Before we continue with the celebrations," she announced, her voice carrying that sugary sweet tone that always preceded her worst moments, "I feel compelled to share some wisdom with my beautiful granddaughter." Beside me, my best friend Juliet squeezed my hand under the table. "Don't let her get to you," she whispered. But we both knew it was already too late. "Zaylee, darling," my mother continued, "you look absolutely stunning today, just like your Aunt Cynthia did at her wedding. Now she knew how to choose a good man." She paused, her eyes finding mine in the crowd. Unlike some of us, the wedding hall fell silent. I could see Zaylee's new husband, Micah, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. My sister Cynthia, perfect as always in her designer dress, looked down at her plate. "Mom," Zaylee started to protest, but Valerie waved her off. No, dear. This needs to be said. Marriage is sacred, and some people—" Another pointed look in my direction. "Some people treat it like a trial run. Your mother's divorce was such a disappointment to this family." The champagne in my glass trembled as my hand shook. 15 years of silence about what really happened in my marriage, all to protect her precious family image. 15 years of letting her spin the narrative that I was the failure, the one who couldn't keep a marriage together. "Lillian," my mother's voice cut through my thoughts, "perhaps you'd like to tell your daughter what not to do in her marriage? Share some of your to your experiences?" Juliet's grip tightened on my hand. "Don't you dare let her win again," she hissed. I looked at Zaylee, my beautiful, strong daughter, who had grown up watching me swallow my mother's insults. She was staring at me with a mixture of concern and something else. Was it hope? "Actually, Mother," I heard myself say, standing up slowly, "I would love to share some experiences." The surprise on her face was almost worth the years of torment. Almost. "Lillian, sit down," she commanded, but her voice wavered slightly. "No, you wanted me to speak, so I'm speaking." I grabbed the microphone from the nearby DJ stand. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "You're right about one thing. Marriage is sacred. That's why I left mine." The room collectively held its breath. Even the servers stopped moving. "Zaylee, honey," I continued, looking directly at my daughter, "your grandmother has spent 15 years telling everyone I failed at marriage. What she hasn't told anyone is why I left your father." "Lillian," my mother's voice cracked like a whip, "this is neither the time nor the place." "It's exactly the time," I cut her off, "because my daughter deserves to know the truth on her wedding day. She deserves to know that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away." I could see Cynthia leaning forward, confusion etched on her face. She had always believed our mother's version of events, just like everyone else. "Mom," Zaylee called out softly, "go on." The love in her voice gave me strength. The microphone felt steadier in my hand as I took a deep breath, ready to shatter 15 years of carefully constructed lies. But before I could continue, my mother played her final card. She stood up, tears welling in her eyes, tears I knew were as fake as her concern had ever been. "Please," she pleaded, "think about what you're doing to this family. Think about your sister, about Zaylee's special day." "I'm thinking about Zaylee," I replied, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "I'm thinking about how she deserves to know that her grandmother chose to protect her abusive son-in-law rather than her own daughter." The gasps were audible. Cynthia's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. And my mother, for the first time in my life, was speechless. I gripped the microphone tighter, knowing there was no going back now. 15 years of secrets were about to come pouring out, and for once, I didn't care about the consequences. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even. It's about finally telling your truth. The silence in the reception hall was deafening. My mother's face had turned an alarming shade of red, but for once, she wasn't the one controlling the narrative. "What did you just say?" Cynthia's voice cracked as she stood up, glass crunching under her heels. "You heard me," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. Our dear mother knew exactly what Clifford was doing to me. She just didn't want anyone else to know. "That's ridiculous," my mother sputtered, but her usual confidence was cracking. Clifford was a perfect gentleman. "A perfect gentleman who put me in the hospital twice," I cut her off. "Remember that, Mother. Remember telling the nurses I fell down the stairs? Remember making me promise not to embarrass the family by pressing charges?" Zaylee pushed back from the head table, her white dress rustling as she stood. "Grandma, is this true?" "Of course not." My mother's voice rose shrilly. "Your mother is clearly having some kind of breakdown." "Show them your wrist, Mom," Zaylee interrupted. "Show them what he did." With trembling fingers, I pushed up my bracelet, revealing the jagged scar that ran across my wrist. "This wasn't from falling downstairs," I said quietly. "This was from being thrown through a glass door when I tried to leave him the first time." Juliet stood up beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "I was there that night," she announced. "I drove her to the emergency room, while Valerie was more concerned about what the neighbors would think." "You knew?" Cynthia turned to our mother, her perfect composure finally cracking. "You knew he was hurting her?" "I was protecting our family name," my mother snapped. "What was I supposed to do? Let her drag our reputation through the mud with a messy divorce and domestic violence charges?" The collective gasp from the wedding guests made her realize what she just admitted. She pressed her hand to her mouth, but it was too late. "So you'd rather have had me dead than divorced?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "Because that's where it was heading, Mother. The night I finally left, he had his hands around my throat." "Stop this," my mother pleaded, looking around desperately. "This is Zaylee's wedding. We shouldn't be—" "No, Grandma." Zaylee's voice rang out clear and strong. "This is exactly what we should be doing. I've watched you tear Mom down my entire life, making her feel like she failed because she left an abusive marriage. I've watched you favor Aunt Cynthia because she stayed in her perfect marriage, never questioning what that perfection cost." Micah stood up beside his new wife, his arm protectively around her waist. "I think everyone here deserves to hear the truth, Mrs. Boyd." "The truth?" My mother laughed hysterically. "The truth is that your mother has always been dramatic, always seeking attention." "Like when I was seeking attention the night Clifford broke 3 of my ribs," I challenged. "Remember that, Mother? You told the doctor I'd fallen off a horse. We didn't even own horses." Cynthia walked over to me, her eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Mother made sure I couldn't," I replied softly. "She convinced everyone I was unstable, that I was making things up. After a while, I almost started believing her myself." "I did what any mother would do," Valerie insisted, but her voice was weaker now. "I protected this family." "You protected your reputation," Juliet snapped. "You protected your country club membership and your social standing. You didn't protect your daughter. And now," I continued, feeling stronger with each word, "you're standing at your granddaughter's wedding, trying to warn her about me, trying to make her think I'm the cautionary tale." "I'm proud of my mom," Zaylee declared, walking over to stand beside me. "She taught me that love shouldn't hurt, that we deserve better than abuse disguised as tradition or family obligation." My mother sank back into her chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. "So yes, Mother, let's share some wisdom with Zaylee on her wedding day. Let's tell her the truth about what happened in this family. All of it." I saw the flash of fear in my mother's eyes as she realized what I meant, because the abuse in my marriage wasn't the only secret she'd helped bury over the years. "Lillian," she warned, "don't you dare." But I was done being silenced, Done protecting lies. Done watching my mother manipulate everyone around her. Actually, Mother, I said, gripping the microphone tighter, I think it's time we talked about Dad's accident, too. Because that wasn't quite the tragedy you made it out to be, was it? The color drained from her face as I prepared to reveal the secret that would destroy what was left of her carefully crafted image. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just telling your own truth. It's exposing everyone else's lies, too. Your father's death was an accident, my mother hissed, but her hands were shaking as she clutched the edge of the table. Was it? I challenged. Because I found the letters, Mother. The ones Dad wrote before his accident. The ones where he threatened to expose your affair with his business partner. Cynthia stumbled backward, catching herself on a nearby chair. What? Oh, yes, I continued, watching my mother's carefully constructed facade crumble. Dad knew about you and Richard. He knew about the money you'd been helping him embezzle from the company. And he was going to turn you both in. Stop this immediately, my mother commanded, but her authority was gone. The tremor in her voice betrayed her fear. 3 days before his car went off that bridge, Dad came to see me, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. He told me he had proof of everything. He was going to the authorities the next morning. You're making this up, my mother whispered, but we both knew I wasn't. I found the briefcase, Mother, the one that mysteriously disappeared after Dad's death. It was hidden in your garden shed all these years, wasn't it? Right where Richard helped you bury it. Juliet stepped forward. I was there when Lillian found it last month. We saw everything. The bank statements, the photos, the letters. And you want to know the worst part? I turned to face the stunned wedding guests. When I tried to tell people something was wrong with Dad's death, Mother did exactly what she did with Clifford. She convinced everyone I was unstable, attention-seeking, making things up. Grandma? Zaley's voice was barely a whisper. Is this true? My mother stood up suddenly, knocking over her chair. This is preposterous. I won't stand here and listen to these lies. Shall we call Richard? I interrupted. I'm sure he'd love to explain why he transferred $2 million to an offshore account the day after Dad died, or why he suddenly moved across the country and never contacted us again. I have the copies, Juliet added, pulling an envelope from her purse. All the documents, all the proof. We made sure to make multiple copies, just in case. Cynthia walked over to Juliet, hands trembling as she took the envelope. As she began reading, her face went pale. Mom? She looked up at our mother, tears streaming down her face. How could you? Everything I did, my mother's voice cracked, I did for this family. Your father was going to ruin us, expose us to scandal. He was going to expose your crimes, I corrected her. And you couldn't let that happen, could you? Just like you couldn't let me expose Clifford's abuse, because nothing matters more to you than your precious reputation. The police, someone in the crowd murmured. Someone should call the police. They've already been called, I said quietly. I filed a report last week. They're reopening Dad's case. My mother's legs gave out, and she collapsed back into her chair. You wouldn't, she breathed. Your own mother. My own mother? I laughed bitterly. My own mother who watched me get beaten and said nothing? Who helped cover up Dad's murder? Who spent years making me think I was crazy, making everyone believe I was the problem? Zaley stepped forward, her wedding dress rustling. I think it's time for you to leave, Grandma. But my mother started to protest. Now, Zaley's voice was firm, before the police arrive. As if on cue, the sound of sirens could be heard in the distance. My mother's face went from red to white in seconds. You've ruined everything, she spat at me, struggling to her feet. All these years, I've tried to protect this family. No, I cut her off. You tried to protect yourself, and now everyone knows the truth. 2 police officers appeared in the doorway of the reception hall. The crowd parted silently as they approached. Mrs. Boyd? One officer asked, looking at my mother. We need you to come with us. As they led her away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Years of secrets, lies, and manipulation were finally coming to light. Cynthia came to stand beside me, still clutching the envelope of evidence. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have known. Should have believed you." "You couldn't have known," I replied softly. She made sure of that. Zaylee wrapped her arms around me, her wedding dress enveloping us both. "I'm proud of you, Mom. So proud." Looking around at the shocked faces of our wedding guests, I realized this wasn't the celebration anyone had expected. But maybe it was exactly what needed to happen. Sometimes the truth, no matter how ugly, needs to come out. And sometimes the best wedding gift you can give is the gift of honesty, even when it shatters everything you thought you knew about your family. The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements and shocked conversations. Most of the wedding guests had left, leaving only close family and a few dedicated friends. Micah's parents were helping the catering staff clean up, trying to restore some semblance of normalcy to the devastated reception. "Mom," Zaylee called from across the room, "there's something else you need to see." She was holding a small, weathered envelope that had fallen from my mother's purse during the arrest. My hands trembled as I took it from her. "It's from Dad," I said, recognizing his handwriting. The envelope was dated just 1 day before his death. Cynthia appeared at my shoulder. "Open it," she urged softly. The letter inside was creased and yellowed, as if it had been read many times over the years. "My dearest Lillian, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I've left evidence of everything in a safety deposit box at First National, Box 247. Your mother doesn't know about it. The key is taped inside your old dollhouse in the attic, the one place she never goes. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from Clifford. I should have done more. Should have stood up to your mother. But I'm making it right now, even if it costs me everything. Take care of Cynthia. She doesn't know how deep this goes. Love, Dad." "She kept this from you all these years," Juliet said, reading over my shoulder. "She must have found it before you did." "The safety deposit box," Cynthia whispered. "We need to check it." "The bank's closed," I started to say. But Micah stepped forward. "My cousin works there," he said. "She can get us in after hours. This is important." An hour later, we stood in the bank's vault room. Me, Cynthia, Zaylee, and Micah. His cousin Sarah watched nervously as we opened Box 247. Inside was another envelope, thick with documents and a small recorder. "Is that a microcassette?" Zaylee asked, picking up the small device. My hand shook as I pressed play. Dad's voice filled the small vault room. "Richard, I know what you and Valerie have been doing. I have proof of every transaction, every lie. It stops now, or I'm going to the FBI. There was rustling, then my mother's voice. "Don't be foolish, Ray. Think about the girls, about our reputation." "I am thinking about the girls." Dad's voice cracked with emotion. "I'm thinking about how you let that monster hurt Lillian, how you've been manipulating Cynthia's life since she was a child. It ends now." The recording clicked off. "There's more," Cynthia said, pulling papers from the envelope. "Bank statements, photographs." She stopped suddenly, her face going pale. "Oh, God. What is it?" I asked. She held up a photograph. It showed our mother and Richard in what appeared to be a heated argument on the bridge where Dad died. The timestamp showed it was taken just hours before his accident. "There's a letter here," Micah said quietly, pulling out a sealed envelope. "It's addressed to both of you." With trembling fingers, I opened it and read aloud. "Lillian and Cynthia, if you're reading this, I failed to stop them, but I made sure the truth wouldn't die with me. Everything you need is here. Proof of the embezzlement, the affairs, the manipulation, and evidence of what they did to me, if my suspicions prove correct. Lillian, you were right about Clifford. I should have believed you. I should have stopped him. Your mother convinced me to stay quiet. said it would ruin the family if people knew. I was a coward, and you paid the price. Cynthia, there's something you need to know about your marriage to Thomas. Your mother arranged it through Richard. Thomas works for their shell company. Nothing about your relationship was accidental. I love you both. Be stronger than I was. Dad. Cynthia sank to the floor. The letter clutched to her chest. My whole marriage, she whispered. It was all orchestrated? All fake? I knelt beside her, wrapping my arms around her shoulders. We'll figure this out. Together. The police need to see all of this, Micah said, carefully gathering the documents. Wait, Zaley interrupted, pulling one last paper from the box. There's something else. It looks like coordinates. I took the paper, recognition dawning. These are directions to the lake house, Dad's old fishing cabin. The one Mother always refused to visit? Cynthia asked, wiping her eyes. He wrote something here, I said, squinting at the faded ink. The rest is buried under the dock. Be careful who you trust. We all looked at each other, the weight of what we discovered settling over us. This wasn't just about exposing our mother's lies anymore. This was about uncovering a conspiracy that had shaped our entire lives. We need to go to that lake house, I said firmly, tonight, because somehow I knew that what we'd found so far was just the beginning. The real truth and the real danger was still waiting to be uncovered. The headlights of Micah's SUV cut through the darkness as we pulled up to the lake house. Zaley was still in her wedding dress, having refused to waste time changing. The moon reflected off the water, casting eerie shadows across the weathered dock. I can't believe it's still standing, Cynthia murmured, staring at the cabin we hadn't visited in 15 years. Look, Zaley pointed to tire tracks in the gravel. Someone's been here recently. My heart stopped. Mother knew about the safety deposit box. What if she knew about this place, too? We need to hurry, Micah said, pulling out flashlights from his emergency kit. The police said they're on their way, but it'll take them at least an hour to get here. We made our way down to the dock, our lights dancing across the dark water. The wooden planks creaked under our feet. Dad's note said under the dock, I reminded them, getting down on my hands and knees to shine the light underneath. There! Partially buried in the mud was a metal box, secured with a heavy padlock. I'll get it, Micah offered, rolling up his sleeves. He waded into the shallow water, reaching for the box. Suddenly, a voice cut through the darkness. I wouldn't do that if I were you. We spun around. Richard, my mother's former business partner, stood at the end of the dock, holding something that glinted in the moonlight. Is that a gun? Zaley gasped. Step away from the dock, Richard commanded. All of you. 15 years, I said, my voice shaking with anger. 15 years you've been free after what you did to my father. Your father was going to ruin everything, Richard snarled. The company, our reputations, the life we'd built. We couldn't let that happen. We? Cynthia asked. You mean you and Mother? A bitter laugh escaped his lips. Your mother? She was just a pawn, useful for keeping Ray distracted while I moved the money. Did you really think she was smart enough to orchestrate all this? But the affair, I started, was convenient, he cut me off. She was so desperate for attention, so easy to manipulate, just like she manipulated all of you. Micah had quietly moved behind us, shielding Zaley. I could hear police sirens in the distance. It's over, Richard, I said firmly. We have the evidence. All of it. No, he growled. You have what Ray wanted you to find. Insurance, he called it. But the real proof. He gestured to the box in the water. That would destroy everything and everyone, including you, Cynthia realized. That's why you're here. Mother told you about the lake house when they arrested her. The sirens were getting closer. Richard's hand tightened on the gun. I've spent 15 years protecting the secret, he said. I'm not going to let it all fall apart now. You killed our father, I said, taking a step forward. You let my mother torture us with lies. You orchestrated my sister's entire marriage. For what? Money? Power, he corrected. The money was just a bonus. Your father's company was the key to everything. The connections, the influence, the illegal dealings, Micah suggested. The fraud? Richard's face twisted. You have no idea how deep this goes. How many people are involved? Your father stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple embezzlement scheme. The sirens were very close now. Red and blue lights began to flash through the trees. It's over, I said again. Whatever's in that box, the police will find it. No, Richard raised the gun. They won't. Everything happened in a blur. Richard fired at the water, aiming for the box. Micah lunged forward, tackling him. The gun went off again, the shot going wide. Zaylee screamed. Police cars burst through the trees, flooding the area with light. Officers poured out, weapons drawn. Drop the weapon, they shouted. Richard struggled against Micah, trying to aim one last shot at the box in the water. But before he could pull the trigger, Cynthia swung an oar from the dock, catching him square in the face. He crumpled, the gun clattering onto the wooden planks. As the police handcuffed Richard, I waded into the water, retrieving the metal box. It was dented from the bullet, but intact. Mom, Zaylee called out, pointing to something floating near the dock. It was a key, probably fallen from Richard's pocket during the struggle. With trembling hands, I fitted the key into the lock. Inside the box were more documents, a USB drive, and a detailed ledger with names, dates, and amounts. Oh my God, Cynthia breathed, looking over my shoulder. These are judges, politicians, business leaders. Your father uncovered a corruption ring, one of the detectives said, carefully taking the box. This could bring down half the city's elite. I stared at the evidence of my father's final investigation, understanding at last why he had died, and why my mother had spent 15 years trying to keep us from the truth that would now finally come to light. The police station buzzed with activity at 3 a.m. Zaylee sat beside me, still in her wedding dress, now stained with lake water and mud. Cynthia paced the small interview room while 2 FBI agents reviewed the documents we'd found. Mrs. Boyd is ready to talk, a detective announced, entering the room. She's asking for both of you. Cynthia stopped pacing. I can't face her. We have to, I said, standing up. We need to hear the truth from her. All of it. The holding cell area was cold and stark. Our mother sat at a metal table, her perfectly manicured hands folded in front of her. She looked smaller somehow, older, her carefully maintained facade crumbling. My girls, she whispered as we sat down across from her. Don't, Cynthia snapped. Just tell us why. I never meant for any of this to happen, she began, her voice trembling. Richard approached me about the company finances. Small things at first, moving money between accounts, adjusting records. It seemed harmless. Until Dad found out, I added. She nodded. Richard had involved me in so much by then. When your father threatened to expose everything, Richard showed me what he really was, what he was capable of. So you helped him kill Dad? Cynthia's voice cracked. No! Our mother leaned forward. I thought Richard would just talk to him, convince him to stay quiet. I didn't know he was planning to. She covered her face with her hands. What about Clifford? I demanded. Was he part of this too? She lowered her hands, looking at me with tears in her eyes. Richard chose him for you. Said we needed someone who could be controlled, who would keep you in line if you started asking questions about your father's death. My stomach lurched. You let him abuse me? On purpose? I was trapped, she cried. Richard threatened to expose everything. Said he'd make sure you both went down with me. I thought if I could just keep everything quiet, keep the family's reputation intact. And my marriage? Cynthia asked quietly. Was that all Richard too? Our mother wouldn't meet her eyes. Thomas works for one of Richard's shell companies. They needed someone on the inside of the family, someone to watch us, to make sure we never talked. The detective who'd been standing quietly in the corner stepped forward. Mrs. Boyd, we need you to tell us about the other people involved, the names in that ledger. If I do, she looked up at him, what happens to my daughters? We're not your daughters anymore, Cynthia said coldly. You lost that right when you chose your reputation over our lives. A knock at the door interrupted us. Another detective entered, looking grave. Richard was just found dead in his cell, he announced. Apparent suicide. No, our mother whispered, her face draining of color. No, no, no. They'll think I talked. They'll come after all of us now. Who will? I demanded. Who else is involved? Judges, politicians, business leaders, she babbled, growing increasingly panicked. They're all connected. Richard was just the tip of the iceberg. Your father found evidence of bribes, blackmail, murder. That's why you kept us away from the lake house, I realized. You knew Dad had hidden proof there. She nodded frantically. Richard said if anything ever came out, we'd all be targets. That's why I had to keep you quiet, keep you controlled. I thought I was protecting you by destroying our lives. Cynthia stood up so suddenly her chair clattered to the floor. By watching me marry a man who was paid to spy on me? By letting Lillian be beaten? We need to move you all to protective custody, the detective interrupted. If what she's saying is true, you're all in danger. I'm not going anywhere with her, I stated firmly. Please, our mother begged. I know I can never make this right, but let me help now. Let me tell them everything I know. Maybe then what? I asked bitterly. We'll forgive you? Become one big happy family again? No, she whispered. But maybe I can finally do what your father tried to do. Maybe I can help bring them all down. The detective's phone buzzed. His face grew serious as he read the message. Thomas was just found in his car outside Cynthia's house, he said grimly. He had a gun and detailed files on all of you. He was waiting. Cynthia collapsed back into her chair, shaking. You see, our mother pleaded, they're already moving. Please let me help protect you. It's the only thing I can do now. I looked at my sister, at the devastation on her face, then back at our mother. The woman who had orchestrated so much pain was now offering to help end it. But could we trust her? Could we trust anything anymore? The detective's phone buzzed again. We need to move. Now. They found Juliet. What do you mean they found Juliet? I grabbed the detective's arm. Is she okay? She's alive, he assured me quickly. But her house was broken into. They took her laptop, the one with copies of your father's evidence. There are more copies, my mother interjected. In a safe at the country club. Richard didn't know about them, but... The country club? Cynthia interrupted. The one where half these corrupt officials are members? Exactly, our mother nodded. It was the perfect hiding place. They'd never think to look in their own backyard. The detective was already on his radio. I need a team at Oakwood Country Club, now. I have to go with them, our mother insisted. The safe is hidden behind a false panel in the women's locker room. I'm the only one who knows exactly where. This could be a trap, I warned the detective. No, my mother grabbed my hand. For the first time in years, I saw real fear in her eyes. Lillian, please. I know I don't deserve your trust, but this is our chance to finish what your father started. My phone rang. It was Juliet. They're watching the hospital, she said without preamble. I just saw 2 men asking about Zaylee and Micah. My blood ran cold. After the lake house incident, we sent them to the hospital to get checked out, just in case. Get them out, I ordered. Use the service entrance. We'll meet you. The safe house on Pine Street, the detective cut in. We have officers there already. Everything moved quickly after that. While one team headed to the hospital, Another escorted us to the country club. The parking lot was empty at this hour, our footsteps echoing in the darkness. Through here, our mother whispered, leading us to a service entrance. She punched in a code and the door clicked open. The locker room was eerily silent. Our mother moved with purpose to a row of wooden panels. "Help me with this," she said, pushing against one section. It swung open, revealing a small safe. As she reached for the keypad, a voice spoke from the shadows. "Step away from the safe, Valerie." A man emerged from behind the lockers, elderly, distinguished-looking, wearing an expensive suit despite the hour. I recognized him immediately. Judge Marcus, one of the most respected officials in the city. "It's over, Marcus," our mother said, her voice steady. "Richard is dead. Thomas has been caught. The FBI has the ledger. And yet here you are," he smiled coldly, "about to make the same mistake Ray did, thinking you can expose us without consequences." More footsteps approached. 2 more men in suits entered the locker room. "The difference is," my mother continued, "Ray was alone. I'm not." On cue, FBI agents emerged from their hiding places around the room, weapons drawn. "Judge Marcus," the lead agent announced, "you're under arrest." But Marcus just laughed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. One phone call and I can..." "Can what?" Cynthia stepped forward, holding up her phone. "Call your friends on the force, the ones who've been taking bribes, because they're being arrested right now, along with 3 state senators, 2 district attorneys, and the police commissioner," I added. Turns out Dad's evidence was very thorough. Marcus's composed facade cracked. "Valerie," he snarled, "after everything we did for you..." "You did nothing for me," our mother spat. "You used me to get to Ray, used my children as pawns, made me think I was protecting them when I was really just helping you destroy them." She turned to the safe and quickly entered the code. Inside was a thick manila envelope and a small recording device. "Here," she handed them to the FBI agent. "Everything Ray collected, names, dates, bank accounts, recordings of meetings, proof of every crime, every cover-up, every murder you ordered." As the agents led Marcus and his associates away, I looked at my mother with new eyes. "You knew," I said quietly. "You knew exactly what was in that safe all along." She nodded. "Ray showed me before everything happened. Made me memorize the location, the code. Said someday I'd have to choose between their protection and the truth. And you chose their protection," Cynthia said bitterly. "Yes," our mother whispered, "because I was a coward. Because I thought I could keep you safe by keeping you controlled. I was wrong. Your father was right. The only way to truly protect someone is to fight for the truth, no matter the cost." The FBI agent returned. "We need to get you all to the safe house. This is just the beginning. Once we start making arrests, others will try to retaliate." As we left the country club, I realized this wasn't the revenge I'd originally sought at Zaley's wedding. This was bigger than exposing our mother's lies. This was about finishing what Dad had died trying to do, bringing down an entire network of corruption that had destroyed countless lives. And somehow, ironically, it had taken our mother's final act of redemption to make it possible. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters as I made my way inside. Juliet squeezed my hand as we passed through security. Today was the final testimony in a trial that had shaken our city to its core. "Ready?" Zaley asked, meeting us in the hallway. She was wearing the same determined expression I'd seen on her wedding day, the day that had started all of this. Inside the courtroom, I saw my mother sitting at the witness stand. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her voice was clear and steady as she detailed decades of corruption, naming names and providing dates with unflinching precision. Judge Marcus and his associates sat stone-faced at the defense table. Behind them, I could see Cynthia in the gallery, clutching a folder of divorce papers. Her eyes met mine, and she gave a slight nod. And what made you finally decide to come forward? The prosecutor asked our mother. She looked directly at me. My daughter showed me that protecting lies isn't the same as protecting people. She had the courage to speak the truth at her own daughter's wedding, even knowing what it would cost her. I realized it was time I did the same. The prosecutor turned to the jury. And the evidence you provided, the documents from the country club safe. Where did those originally come from? My husband, Ray, she replied, her voice catching. He died trying to expose this corruption. I helped cover it up because I was afraid, but he left the evidence where he knew we'd eventually find it, where he knew his daughters would be brave enough to use it. After the testimony, we gathered in the courthouse lobby. Reporters clamored outside, but for now, we had a moment of quiet. The jury won't take long, Juliet said. Not with all that evidence. It's not just about the conviction anymore, I replied, watching my mother being led back to custody. It's about the truth finally being heard. Cynthia joined us, her divorce papers now officially filed. Thomas took a plea deal, she announced. He's testifying against the rest of the organization. Good, Zaley said firmly. Let them all go down together. My mother's attorney approached us. She's asking to speak with you both, he said to me and Cynthia, in private. We followed him to a small conference room. Our mother sat at the table, her hands folded in front of her, just like at the police station. I know I can never make up for what I did to you both, she began, but I want you to know, your father would be so proud of you. You did what I should have done 15 years ago. Why didn't you? Cynthia asked. When Dad first showed you the evidence, why didn't you help him then? Because I was more concerned with appearances than truth, she replied simply. I thought I could control everything. Your lives, your relationships, the narrative. I was wrong. Yes, I said. You were. She nodded. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that everything coming out now, all these arrests, all these corrupt people finally facing justice, it's because of you. Because you were stronger than I ever was. A knock at the door interrupted us. The jury had reached a verdict. Back in the courtroom, we listened as guilty was pronounced again and again. Judge Marcus slumped in his chair. His corrupt empire was finally crumbling. Outside, reporters thrust microphones at us, asking for statements. But it was Zaley who stepped forward. This started at my wedding, she said clearly, when my mother had the courage to speak the truth about family abuse. It ended here, with the exposure of corruption that has poisoned our city for decades. The lesson is simple. Secrets only protect the guilty. The truth, no matter how painful, sets us all free. Later that evening, we gathered at Juliet's house. Me, Cynthia, Zaley, Micah, and Juliet. On the TV, news channels were still reporting on the verdicts, showing footage of prominent figures being led away in handcuffs. Dad would have loved this, Cynthia said softly, raising her glass. To the truth. To the truth, we echoed. And to new beginnings, Zaley added, snuggling closer to Micah. Without lies or manipulation or forced marriages. Speaking of new beginnings, Juliet grinned, wait until you hear who asked me out. As she launched into her story, I looked around at my real family, not the perfect image my mother had tried to maintain, but something better, honest, flawed, and real. The truth had cost us our mother, our illusions, and our carefully constructed social standing, but it had given us something far more valuable, freedom. Freedom to be ourselves, to choose our own paths, to love without conditions or controls. And somewhere I knew Dad was smiling, because his daughters had finally finished what he started, not just exposing corruption, but breaking free from the chains of lies that had bound our family for so long. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about getting free.